Bismillah, in this particular part of the video, we're going to explore essay items. Right now, essay questions are categorized under constructed response item. That means to say that students have to construct their answer as compared to the previous one, which is MCQ, which is choice response item or selected choice response item, whereby students required to choose the response. So this one here is students need to construct their response as required. So students to supply and construct rather than select an answer or response. Now, the types of essay items, mainly we are going to explore two, okay, which is BRE, stands for Brief Response Essay Item, and Extended Response Essay Item. Okay, so for Brief Response is basically shorter than the extended one. So typically it's few sentences for BRE, while ERE is longer than one paragraph. BRE is more focused, while extended is much more in-depth and more comprehensive expectation of the answer. Usually BRE is take less than 10 minutes per item, while ERE takes more than 10 minutes. And for BRE, it is appropriate to assess remembering, understanding, or applying, while ERE is more appropriate to assess analyzing, evaluating, or other complex LO. Okay. However, it doesn't mean that BRE cannot also assess complex LO. It depends on how the question is actually designed and the expectation. Okay. Sometimes in a certain field of study, the response is very short, but then again, it tests higher order thinking or complex thinking there. That's also possible as well. But just that here we're talking about typically a brief response essay item assesses simpler, less complex LO as compared to the extended response. Now, this is an example of a brief response essay item. This is the prompt. So again, here is the anatomy. I'm showing you the anatomy of the brief response item. So you have the prompt here, and then sometimes you have a pictorial stimulus depending on the need of the question. Sometimes a question does not have this. Okay, some question have statistical tables, right? Graph probably, okay, a bar chart, okay, it depends on situation and depends on field of study. Sometimes there's photo, okay, depending on the need of the question. And the rest, okay, the third part would be the question. Okay, the demand of the lecturer to the student, and the student need to satisfy this request. And the other one is there's a points awarded. This is to basically indicate and to give the expectation or communicate lecturer's expectation of the question to the student on how much do they need to write. Okay, so it's important to have all these elements here except for pictorial stimulus depending on the question need. Now, this is an example of extended response item. Okay, so there's also a prompt, there's a question, and there's a criteria for grading. Okay, because it's an extended, so there are a lot of elements or expectation that are there. So one key difference between the BRE and the ERE is that the criteria for grading is usually also included, so that students would know what is expected to be written in the extended response per question. Okay, so and you also have the marks as well. Now, in writing essay items, okay, you should define, okay, the intended LO. Again, this is to maintain validity. So this one you can refer to the TTS as well, okay, or the TST or the TOS. And use novel materials, okay, because why? Novel here basically means that it's different from the exercises that has been done in class. Okay, so in instruction. So if let's say the learning outcome to be tested for students is that they must construct answers based on their own opinions and thoughts, right? So you don't want to give a stimulus or prompt or material that has already been used in class practices. Because why? That may, especially if the prompt and materials are the same and the question are also the same, then the LO that you might be testing is probably just simply recalling of what they have discuss in the class. So and the purpose of writing an extended response or essay response item is not, typically it's not to test recalling that much, okay, but it depends on situation as well. Okay, so this to elaborate the point of use novel materials. Basically it means to say that use different materials from the one that you have shared in class. Particularly here, we are talking about the prompt and the question. The question can sometimes be the same, okay, so long as the prompt is actually different. And sometimes there are cases whereby the prompt is the same, but the question is different. Okay, but typically, okay, the question is usually the same, but the prompt is different. Okay, from the one that is discussed in class. The task must be reasonable. Okay, so if let's say reasonable here in terms of time or in terms of marks. That's why you want to add this. Okay, so let's say you ask, give reason to your answer, and then there's like 3 brief response item need to be answered in 10 minutes, let's say. In terms of time, if let's say the expected answer will be quite short as a brief response, and that's reasonable. But if you actually expect that, you know, this question to be answered in 10 minutes time, this is unreasonable. Okay, so in terms of time, so reasonable here means in terms of time, for example, or in terms of the task itself. Okay, like the question, okay, like here, show how you arrive at this value. Okay, you ask this question, but you give, okay, 20 marks for it. That's also unreasonable. So students don't know what more to write. Okay, so reasonable could mean that it is based on time. Students have enough time to complete the essay items, or that the question is reasonably matched with the marks, okay, allocated. That's also part of that as well. The kind of question that is asked to the students in terms of the question is reasonable to the extent that it doesn't exceed the expected learning outcome. So as in the learning outcome, it should test the student's explanation skill. Student must be able to explain concepts, for example, but the task in the writing essay item there asks about them to analyze or create a theory, for example. That one is unreasonable there. So that's why it should also tally with the learning outcome as well. Now, avoid giving choices. Okay, it's not recommended whereby you have a certain kind of question, like several questions. You have in one sheet of paper one particular final exam test, and then question you say that there are 10 questions, answer 5 questions. There are 10 extended response item, choose 5. Okay, now why is that not recommended? It's because that let's say you have 10 questions, right? And then the syllabus have 10 topics. Okay, and from that 10 topics you have 10 questions, and the assessment should test students' knowledge on all those 10 topics. If you make them choose only 5 topics, that means to say that the other 5 topics technically are not assessed. Okay, so it's not assessed there, right? So it also affects the validity of the assessment as well, if that is the case. But sometimes, you know, you can get passed by, for example, in the case whereby the final exam has 5 topics, and you have 10 questions, answer 5. Okay, so let's say for one topic, you give them 2 choices, in which the coverage is the same. Okay, the coverage is the same. It still covers the same topic, but it's just different prompting. So different prompts. Okay, so you give students different prompts and ask them to choose either prompts they want there. So that one is better. Okay, that one is better as compared to having 10 topics and ask them to answer based on 5 topics only. That one is better. That means to say that all the topics are covered for the case whereby you have 2 different prompts but having the same question, and they can choose which prompt they want to answer. So you give them the choice like that. That one is okay. That one is actually better. So the main concern here is that how to determine whether this is actually good or not is that ask yourself whether the assessment is testing what kind of coverage, right? So it should cover the topics that it intends to cover. That is the validity there. And the essay item should be clear and precise, and it should place students into the question. Okay, so what does place student into the question means here? Meaning to say that, for example, there's an item whereby you actually ask the student, okay, this is not the example, yeah, is this an example? Right, okay, so like for example here, I'm just using the same stamp here. So you put the student in the prompt. Okay, like for example, you are a manager of a bookstore. Okay, write a business plan, a full business plan containing the apa semua. So you include them as part of your question there. So that will make it much more authentic. There's a term there, authentic assessment there, in which you want to test the real. It is closer to the learning outcome that is intended usually in the case there.